Hello and welcome once again to our kitchen table. I'm sitting here with my wife, your therapist, and we're going to be talking about anxiety today.
I'm so excited to talk about anxiety. It's one of my favorite topics, but I also can't believe we haven't talked about it yet on the podcast.
Yeah, we've talked about a lot of general topics.
It could have been week 2 or 3, honestly, and I don't know why we haven't done it yet, but I'm excited.
We haven't done it yet for a reason, in my opinion.
Oh.
This is not something we articulated months ago to one another.
We're anxious.
Yeah, we're so terrified to bring it up. We're going to be taking a hiatus.
Yeah.
So we want to tell you about that hiatus, and then we want to talk about anxiety. Maybe taking a hiatus makes us feel anxious.
Maybe.
But anxiety feels like one of the most common, across the board, universal issues that I think everybody deals with, especially in the modern world. And so it feels like the right episode to go out on.
Okay, I'm with you.
As always, my name is Price, and I married your therapist.
I'm Ash, and I'm your therapist. This is a podcast, not therapy, but we sure do talk about it. So let's get into it.
We yap about it around here. We're about to talk about taking a break for the holidays and kind of reminiscing over the past year of recording this podcast. If you'd like to skip straight to the anxiety discussion, round about the 16-minute mark is where you're going to want to go. So you can hop straight there, or you can hang out with us while we, give you some updates about where we're at and what's going on with us. So yeah, we're taking a hiatus. Tell us what we're doing, Ash.
We're taking the holidays off. We're giving ourselves a little bit of time. We have been recording weekly, the entire year.
We haven't missed a week.
We haven't missed a week.
Kind of crazy, actually.
Yeah, and it'll be nice to have a little bit of a break and a little bit of time to plan and think about the future and upcoming episodes and what we want for next year. So yeah. I'm really excited for the time where we'll be kind of strategizing. But yeah.
The recording or brainstorming, researching, recording, editing, and posting a podcast takes a great deal longer than the amount of time it takes to just record it. Like what you're hearing is maybe, a quarter on the best weeks, on the easiest weeks, about a quarter of the time it takes. And that's not me complaining, but it is a significant effort, and it's a significant effort that's eaten a lot of our time over the past year.
And it's a specifically high amount of effort for you because you do the editing. You make sure that it gets posted everywhere. You've created every video that we've had and all of those things.
My pleasure, my treasure.
But we're in a very different place than we were last year as well.
Yep.
Where last year you weren't working.
Yep.
I hadn't quite gotten into the practice yet, and I had left my other job, so I wasn't really working, and we were just in a different spot.
We took this on because we had the time and the bandwidth, and now we are very much working.
Very much working.
We both are. We have
Thankfully.
very busy schedules. Yeah, we're very grateful for that. So it's just a different beast than it used to be. Like we used to post daily TikToks and stuff, and I don't have time to edit those anymore. It's been several months since we've been able to do that, even though I think that's great and I loved doing it.
Yeah.
But I just don't have the bandwidth for that anymore. So we're shifting, but it is our goal to bring you the best podcast that we can. And I think in order to do that, I would like to take the holidays off.
More than just the weeks in between, a week at a time to plan. But I'd really love to get to sit down and really make a good strategy for the year.
Yeah, we got some stuff we're trying to do in our lives right now. And I would like to come into 2024 fucking swinging.
Yeah.
Swinging for the fucking fences. Yeah. So I want to take a minute and reflect on the past year.
Okay.
Because we have put out an episode a week.
Yeah.
It's been a huge investment.
Yeah.
And I want you to share, what's this experience been like for you?
I've just been so surprised and delighted by how invested folks are in it. Some of the response that we've got has just meant the world to us. And I think that we say this quite a bit. But really, this was just something that We started because we love having these conversations. I think it's useful for people to have access to, and I hoped it'd be something I could like direct some of my clients to.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, here's a conversation where I'm talking about this thing you might be dealing with. But for it to have reached such a wider audience than we ever imagined, and then to have people go, this has changed the way that I am with my partner. This has changed the way that I am with myself. I get to see that on like a case by case basis with clients, but again, to have just this wider audience of people feel impacted by it has like blown my mind.
Y'all aren't sending us messages that are like, "Hey, good shit, bro. That
Nice.
shit was
Yeah,
funny."
like
You're
it.
sending us like messages like, "Hey, this actually changed the way I think about myself," or "I've never heard somebody talk about neurodivergence the way that y'all do." Like y'all are sending like messages that are serious and deep and motivating.
Yeah.
To keep doing it.
Oh my gosh, it has just meant so much. So that's been a big piece. And then another thing, it's been so fun to be working together with you for the year, and something that has been a special like delight to my heart is how into you people are. And this has always been something that, you know, I'm of course very into you. I think that you're so wonderful, but to get to share you, I think with the world has like just made me so happy.
No.
People are
This
so
is-
excited to hear
This
from
is my
you.
podcast. I'm sharing you.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, tell me what you liked about the podcast or what you learned.
The most valuable lesson I've learned over the past year is that they just let anybody start fucking podcasts. y'all.
Anybody.
Anybody.
Oh, my God.
You don't need to be credentialed or anything. You just fucking record a podcast and post it.
My credentials are just miscellaneous. They're extra.
Yeah, right. No, January 2023, we are posting episodes weekly. We're getting about 12 views or 12 listens or downloads or whatever.
And we are psyched
ecstatic.
about it.
Like 12 people.
Oh, my God.
A
I don't
dozen
even
people.
know a dozen
I remember
people.
like 12 people listened to my podcast this week. That's nuts. And it was, I don't know how y'all found us.
Yeah.
Where did you guys, we didn't have any social media, like nothing. Like we had nothing and y'all were listening. That's nuts. And then reaching out and telling us like that it meant something.
Yeah.
Then we started posting videos. Like I was editing shorts of the podcast. So we started posting those on like Instagram and TikTok. First of all, 1 like on Instagram is worth like 1,000 likes on TikTok, just from a currency perspective. But obviously we haven't been posting videos in a long time because I've been super swamped with my new job.
Yeah.
But we had a video kind of blow up on us in like, I want to say March, but that may be wrong. And so the number of listeners we had exploded.
Yeah.
And then topped off a little, like, then kind of like leveled off. And we have several hundred people listen a week. Mm-hmm. And that number has stayed consistent for the rest of the year, basically. Yeah. So I just want to thank everybody who has, no matter how you heard about us or how you got here, it means the world to us that you're listening, that you're sharing with your friends and family, hopefully passive aggressively.
That's always your goal.
I like stirring the pot.
I know.
And for those of you who reached out and connected with us and told us that it meant something to you, that is so impactful. You have no idea. We are just talking into microphones here. And so to hear that it's having an impact is so meaningful.
That's the biggest deal. That has meant the most to us.
Another thing that happened that was pretty wild and an unexpected outcome was that we had a lot of people reaching out saying, I want Ash to be my therapist. Mm-hmm. But you're only licensed to practice therapy in North Carolina, and you are unable to provide therapy to people outside of the state.
Yeah.
So we started a separate legal business so that you could offer life coaching to these folks. What you do is virtually therapy, but it's not the same thing.
Right.
It's just like the conversations you're having are virtually the same. It's just you can't legally call it therapy because it's not legally, because it's a fucked up like local government or state government thing, right?
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of things in like the medical field, which like the clinical mental health therapy field is definitely connected to.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of like needing ownership of, and
Yeah.
you know, don't see our clients in other states, and that is actually soon to change. There's like reciprocity coming and other things happening, and that's very exciting.
The field's
But in
catching up to the
meantime-
21st century.
Thank God.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I was getting to provide life coaching, and I'm still doing that. And oh my God, it's just been the best. The people
Yeah.
who've reached out from all over are just some of the best people. people, and it has been like the experience of a lifetime to get to work with them. So that's been lovely.
So if you're sitting there like, man, I wish that Ash could be my therapist, she can. She can. Or not she can be your life coach. I should clarify. But yeah, it was, I mean, first of all, you started kind of investing in your private practice this year for the first time, and it exploded.
Yeah.
You have a wait list just after a few months of like fully investing in the practice, and a pretty significant percentage of your clientele are people that you see as a life coach, which is pretty crazy. So yeah, if you're listening and you want to work with Ash, you can. Email us at imarriedyourtherapist@gmail.com, and we'd love to connect you.
Sure.
Yeah. And then also your practice is now growing.
I have amazing news, guys. I'm hiring a new therapist. I could not be more excited about it. I just think that this person is going to provide, every time there can be a different like bit of insight and somebody else with lived experience, but another perspective is like so amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm so excited to share this person with you all. And if you're in North Carolina and would like therapy services and haven't gotten to do that yet, now is an amazing, amazing time to be reaching out. I'm very, very excited.
Yeah. So there are a few episodes in our backlog, because we have listeners who drop in and listen to specific episodes that seem relevant to them.
Yep.
I love that. We also have listeners who like are dedicated to listen to each episode as it comes out. Hey, Mom.
Hi.
She said that she could do without all the cursing. That was her feedback for us.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, fuck. I have a few episodes that kind of stood out to me, and I think to you for the most part, as particularly like enjoyable. So if you want to listen to the podcast while we take a break, these are the episodes I would recommend. So we heard your girlfriend's neurodivergent. What was that one about?
Like having neurodivergent relationships, being in relationship either where both people are neurodivergent or one person is, and kind of coping through that.
Well, so many of your clients were in relationships where they were neurodivergent, their partner was, or both, and they were having relationship issues that could have been rectified just by understanding more about how that person's brain works.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny how that works?
Well, we all come into relationships speaking different languages. And then I think if you really have a brain that's quite different from your partner, that's going to present a different level of that. And I think there's something really exciting that happens there. And we bring really different strengths to the table. But yeah, a great episode for relationships.
It's kind of what I love about this podcast. It's just like, these are the things I want to tell my clients.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to record.
Yeah.
Is the stuff you find yourself saying or want to be saying to your clients.
Right. I want all of them to know this. So.
One time I fought a lion, aka trauma responses.
Yep.
When is it time to stop therapy? Pretty direct question, pretty valid question. You give some really great insight to understanding when it's time.
Yep.
Hydration equals strong relationships. We can give some relationship advice. Bad therapy, the red flags.
That's an especially good one. I think a lot of people have really found value in that, for sure.
We got a lot of feedback on that one.
Yeah.
It's ladies' night. ADHD and women.
A classic. If you want to see Price at his best, that's the one you want to tune in
If you want to see a big straight white guy get super amped up about ladies with ADHD, this one's for you.
This one's for you.
Oh, hell no. Religious trauma, dealing with religious trauma.
A big favorite of mine.
And most recently, my mom joined us for Did Your Parents Set You Up for Success? Which I thought was an important episode to me because it was nice to have her on.
Yeah.
And talk through them.
You know, as we plan out the upcoming year, I'm really interested in doing another trauma and religion one. I think that you really shared your story a lot there.
I did, yeah.
And I think that was very helpful to get this like acute look at what you've gone through and how that impacted you. But I have so much more to say that I feel like we didn't get to.
No, we ended that episode ended, and I was like, just like church, the lady did not speak, did not lead the session. It was just like church. Oh my gosh, we have 3 cats on the table right now, or approaching the table. I'm sorry, that's distracting.
Ooh, okay.
We're taking a few weeks off. We so value you. We so value this podcast. We're going to take some time off for us to get right and to focus on bringing you the best podcast that we can in 2024. We're committed to doing it. We love doing this.
Yeah, we
So
will be back.
Just be patient, be gracious with us. Hope you enjoy older episodes if that's your thing. If not, we are excited to see you in January. We would ask, as we spend the next few weeks brainstorming, for your feedback. First of all, it's really helpful. This kind of feels like we're shouting in a void at times because we're just recording into a microphone. But when we hear back from you, it's very helpful to know that people are listening and to know what matters to them, and then we can do more of that.
This is your chance to shape the podcast. Like, if there's something you've been wanting to hear, we love that. Sometimes when people reach out, when I've asked for suggestions, people will reach out and be like, I don't want to bother you. Like, no, this is for our listeners. This is for what works for you.
Y'all are some cuties. You're like, I don't want to bother you, but
we love you guys.
If you could maybe talk about, but you don't have to. You know, I don't want to bother you. No, like fucking reach out and be like, hey, I want you to dive into this thing.
Yeah.
We tell us that we will do it. We spend a lot of time researching this stuff, and we love to do it like with a purpose or with somebody in mind. So please do that. Okay. Well, thank you all so much. I'd love to jump straight into talking about anxiety.
Let's do it. Finally.
So, for those of you who want to know how the sausage is made, there's no outline today. There's no questions today. There's been no previous discussion to anxiety. We're a raw dog in this conversation.
Welcome.
So, Ash, what is anxiety?
I love anxiety, and I have dealt
you're
with
alone
anxiety.
In that. You do not represent me in that.
I don't mean that anybody has ever loved having anxiety, but I love to talk about anxiety, and I have dealt with lifelong anxiety. So anxiety is actually part of our like fight or flight trauma response. So again, that trauma response episode we recommended that we've talked about in the past, but anxiety is what happens when that trauma response gets triggered and it's preparing your body to run or to fight. And so you've got racing thoughts. It's making everything feel like quick and fast and overwhelming, racing heart, all of the stuff that your body needs to literally physically engage in the issue. But the big problem is that made sense for us biologically when most of our threats were like a physical threat, something coming after us.
Yeah, that's why we talk about like one time I fought a lion, because that's kind of where my brain goes when we talk about anxiety. It's like there's a fucking lion in the bushes, and I'm anxious about it. Like,
there's a huge
real
predator.
thing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And instead, maybe it's your, work email. Not a lot to like fight or run from. So
maybe
when
it's your bitch of a neighbor who won't leave you the fuck alone,
Right. Yeah. It could be.
I was thinking of a man when I said bitch there, by the way. I'm sorry. That was kind of rude.
Okay.
I'm just looking into his backyard right now.
Okay. Accepted.
She knows what I'm talking about.
But yeah, so it feels really mismatched. And then it can be incredibly overwhelming to deal with because your body is getting prepared to do this thing, and it engages other processes as well. So on the one hand, it's ramping up heart rate. It can change your eyesight. You can feel like you get tunnel vision, which is exactly what you need to like run and escape from something, or to zoom in on who you're fighting. So it's doing these sorts of things. And then it's also shutting down other systems. So it can be shutting down libido. You don't need to have sex if you're in the middle of running from a lion or fighting it.
Oh my God, babe, run. There's a lot. Wait, hold up.
Hold up.
Hold up. I got an idea.
You're kind of sexy when you fight a lion.
Oh, girl, I love the way you run through the savannah.
And it's shutting down digestion. So a lot of people dealing with anxiety will feel a little bit constipated or have some anxious anxiety poops, which if you have anxiety, you're probably deeply familiar with. But it's doing a lot of these things.
One time I got on an airplane.
Oh, no.
I was flying home from Puerto Rico for a work trip back when I worked for a company that sent me places. That was cool. And I had fish tacos in the airport, and then I got on the airplane, And this was a time in my life where I was dealing with like crippling anxiety
Like
at all
chronic
times.
anxiety all the time.
I don't like flying, and there was just a lot going on in my life at the time. And it was an act of terrorism on that plane. So we're lining up to get on the plane, and I'm like, I am not going to be able to hold this. Like this is happening, and I'm like, we're boarding. And I'm looking around the terminal, like, is there a bathroom nearby? There's not a bathroom nearby.
Oh, yeah.
So I board the plane.
Oh,
and
you're about to get locked into your seat. You're about to have that
I walk past
unlocking
my
your
seat
seatbelt sign.
in the row of people to the bathroom, and I used the bathroom. And I didn't shelter in place until everyone had boarded. I opened the door. When I had done my duty, I opened the door.
Oh, no.
The flight attendant is standing right there, and there are still people boarding the plane. So I'm like, open the door, and like 8 inches in front of me is another human who got to take all of that in.
Yeah.
As well with the other plane. If y'all have ever gotten a look before, like where looks can kill, from an entire cabin, y'all know about these anxiety shits. Okay?
I remember you texting about that at the time.
It was horrible. I had to go to my seat. And I was seated right by this bathroom. So everyone there, like, you could smell it basically the entire flight home.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Thanks for listening to the podcast, y'all.
wow, thanks for being here. But yeah, that's the thing. It really doesn't fit the environment. So you're dealing with all these things that if you're running from something or fighting something, they make complete sense. Of course, that's super
It's
helpful.
biologically appropriate.
Your body doesn't need to be processing
yeah.
food if you're running.
Yeah.
But man, when you're just living your life and you're like, my libido's all over the place, like I'm not having a lot of intimacy with my partner, or I'm having all of these stomach issues all the time. I'm always uncomfortable. My heart's racing. I'm sweating. All of this stuff is happening. And I just feel chronically like shit all of the time. That doesn't feel good. And then a lot of other things that happen with anxiety is that people start to wonder what else is wrong with them, because your brain is looking to find the source of your anxiety. And when you've just got a lot of underlying stuff, when you're coming out of maybe a childhood that wasn't perfectly suited to you or was actively detrimental, if you're in an environment that's new and uncomfortable, if you're dealing with these things, a lot of people start to go, what's wrong with me? I've worked with a lot of students who are in like really taxing, overwhelming programs, and they're like, I think I have cancer. I think that something is wrong with me. I think I have a serious illness. My skin is tingly.
How many of y'all know you're neurodivergent now, but felt very anxious prior to coming to that conclusion? You're like, man, something's not making sense.
Yep.
A lot of people go to college and find out that they're neurodivergent because they're coming from an environment that they knew.
Yep.
And then they get to a new one. They get dropped into a new environment. It's like, oh shit, my brain doesn't work like everybody else's.
Yeah.
And that's a very difficult time for a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
A lot of anxiety wrapped up in that.
Yeah. No, it's so hard. And you just feel like your body is, quitting on you. It's also looking for internal sources of threat, because the other thing that can give us that like fight or flight sense of anxiety is that you eat something poisonous you're not supposed to have.
Okay.
And your body goes through kind of the same system to get rid of it.
The Puerto Rico treatment.
So again, like you have this system that's not working, but your body's looking for a reason. So you might be really snippy with the people in your life. You might also, be highly suspecting that something else is wrong with you. And I think my lifetime of anxiety was down to being like an autistic person in a neurotypical world and just being like, something is wrong. Yeah. Something's deeply wrong with me. I think that I'm broken.
I saw you loosen your grip on things, figuratively, when you came to the conclusion that you were autistic. You became such a more relaxed person when you had that revelation.
I remember telling my therapist at the time, so I figured out that I was autistic, and it was within a couple weeks of that, I told her I was driving in the car and I realized I hadn't been thinking about anything for a minute. And I had never in my life had a moment where I wasn't anxiously turning something over in my brain.
Wow.
And it was the most relieving feeling I have maybe ever felt. It was just this incredible moment. It was just a couple seconds, honestly, but I just felt like, oh my God, I'm going to make it. And that's the other thing about anxiety is it's like, am I going to make it? And so here's the other piece of anxiety that's important. A lot of people don't want to lose their anxiety because their anxiety feels like their best friend.
Oh my God, I've felt this. I've heard this.
Yeah.
Oh, you think, the only thing that's holding all of my shit together is the fact that I am so anxious about it.
And then there's this like, things are already constantly on the brink of falling apart. And as shitty as anxiety has, if I didn't have that, there is no way I'd be able to keep it together. Anxiety is what gets me out of bed in the morning. It's what reminds me to do
If
the
the
stuff
enemy
I have
is
to
at
do.
the gate, the last thing you're going to do is tell your night watchman to take the night off.
Right, go ahead and get some rest, buddy.
Rest easy tonight. Like, no, the enemy's at the fucking gate. We have to be on high alert.
Yeah.
Right.
And so something really lovely that I get to do as a therapist, not only is like help provide the psychoeducation, which is to say that like, it does feel like your best friend, and I deeply get that. Anxiety was my best friend, and I felt like it was the only thing that kept me alive day to day was that I had this, sense of oncoming dread all the time about what I was going to miss.
Yeah.
And then you see that proven again and again because you're like, oh, I was worried about this thing, and then it happened, and I was only ready because I was worried about it. So on the one hand, what would be much better for that night watchman is if he got a nice night of rest. He would do a lot better at his job if he were able to like get some sleep and to take the night off and to rest. But then the other part of that is, oh God, I've lost my train of thought once again.
I got you.
Oh, yeah?
I've got a train of thought to jump on.
Get it. Okay.
I
I'll
have
remember it at some point.
a pretty significant confession to make.
Okay.
Kind of a bomb to drop.
Wow.
This late in our run as a podcast so far.
Okay, let's do it.
I don't like that therapy's so necessary.
Yeah.
I don't think that it's reflective of a healthy society.
Yeah.
That we need to go see licensed professionals to work through our interpersonal issues. I don't like that. I don't like that is true.
Yeah.
I recognize and live in the reality that it is true. Mm-hmm. We are so far removed from the things that we need in order to live happy, healthy lives.
Yeah.
If you look at what our brain was biologically adapted to, anxiety is a great illustration of this.
Yeah.
That anxiety is a chemical reaction that our brain develops for.
It's a good thing.
It
it's
is a good
adaptive.
thing.
It's helpful.
It's helpful. But we're all dealing with anxiety disorders because our lives in the modern world are disordered. When you look at what's best for us just as humans, which would be to be growing our own food and to living in small villages of maybe 100 to a few hundred people, and building relationships. Like you're supposed to be the best at something, right? Mm-hmm. You're supposed to be the best, and you're
in a group of 100 people, you're supposed to really corner the market on the thing that you're good at, and to be in community with other people who are good at other things, and to get to share that together. Yeah,
but we are so far removed from, I think, the hallmarks of like what our bodies are meant to do, because technology has advanced at such an accelerated rate that of course we're dealing with anxiety. We are dealing with like these invisible lions that we can't do anything about. They are in the bushes. I am constantly worried that if a meeting goes poorly that I run at my job, that I will lose my job. And I have lost a job before.
Right.
And
you feel very replaceable, and I don't matter as an individual here. I'm just like here to get a task done.
But these are soft skills we're talking about, right? These are like, there's no immediate, hey, Price, I want you to know that on the scale of 1 to 10, you scored an 8 for this meeting. You know what I mean? Like,
it's a feeling that you've got to have at the
vibe,
end. It's a
right?
vibe.
And so I think we all deal with stuff like that, where we're just perpetually stressed about losing what we have, losing face, damaging the relationships of the people that we care about, and not prioritizing ourselves. Yeah. I think anxiety is a great pinpoint example of this, and that's why, again, I'm saying that I don't love the realistic need for therapy that we have in our society today.
Yeah.
Of course, society is not changing, and I love getting to watch Love is Blind
Oh my
bullshit
God. Yeah.
on Netflix with you.
Just back to back to back to back.
I'm not like better than this thing I'm criticizing. I'm just commenting on it. You know,
We both have smartphones, which is something that's happened during the podcast that you've gotten a smartphone. But like we're on our phones. We're engaged in it for sure.
Yeah.
And we benefit from you having like a big corporate job, and all of that stuff is great. And I certainly benefit from the need that like people need therapy, because then I get to be a therapist, which is my favorite job in the world.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. I think that there's something really sad about what it comes down to, anxiety or not, whatever people are facing. Most of the time people like they need to be like seen and heard and valued just as they are.
Yeah, and have like real human connection. And we have commodified it. We have monetized it. Like we have monetized every fucking thing. I can't think of a single thing in my life that's not commodified in some way. Even like hiking or getting out into nature is like, I got to go to the camping store or the outdoor store and buy all the stuff. And I got to pay for the permit. And I've got, you know, like it's just, there's nothing in my life that's not directly tied to like money in some way. And I am getting like comrade. I'm getting like real radical over here. I'm radicalizing myself over it.
No,
that's a little bit of a tangent, and I'm sorry, but that's just where my head was.
Well, to bring that around, I think it's making you very anxious to be thinking about that. And what I mean by that is like, I think it's making everybody very anxious for that to be true. That like not just think that things are commodified, but that there's no access to things that can just feel like pure and good and lovely. I mean, like to go make friends, you probably got to download an app to do that. To go be a part of things, you've probably got like everything is tied to so many.
We got to protect our libraries, people. It's like the last place.
True.
It's like the last place on this planet that I just purely love.
To come back around to, I think I remembered what I was talking about earlier, is that on the one hand, it's about getting to provide the like education about what anxiety is and why, you know, those things are happening. And that it feels like your best friend, but it's actually the thing creating the stress. And that you can actually think more clearly through things when you're not worried about them, because worry is doing all sorts of disruptive things to the part of your brain that like thinks critically and logically about things. It's the part of your brain that helps you to connect socially. And when those things are shut down, when you're feeling worried and anxious, you're not able to do those things well and naturally.
It makes me think like when you meet somebody who's just an ass, that maybe they're very stressed out about something. Maybe they're very anxious about something.
And aren't people like that? Like they are saying illogical things. They are saying like weird shit and upset about weird shit, and it like doesn't always make sense.
That's why people freak out at airports. They're so fucking anxious. They're so fucking stressed out that, you know, one thing goes wrong, they miss their flight and they lose their shit. In a situation where they may not normally.
It's wild to be so reliant on something so far outside of your control.
Yeah.
Something that feels so unreliable. From the moment you walk in, things feel unreliable. Then the other side of that.
Take back your power. Shit in the bathroom on the plane while they're boarding.
Oh my God. That just makes me think like take your anxiety shits on the clock.
Yes, get paid for those.
I saw something about like saving your tears for Mondays or whatever. It was a meme I saved a long time ago.
Fuck yes, don't cry in your own time.
The other thing though that's really great that I get to do in a therapy space and that I can do for you right here, right now, is just to tell you that like your anxiety makes sense. Your body seeming like it's freaking out, feeling like you've got 100 different things going on. Internally, like something is wrong. I think I've developed some sort of illness.
Yeah.
To feel like the world is always like at the brink of destruction. Those things make sense. And this is a very tough moment to live in. And it's very tough that we're hearing about things on a global scale. It's very tough that the world is not built to the way that like our brains work and the things that we just need deeply as humans, but that there is so much distance and disconnect. We were recently at that DEI conference and they were talking about generational stuff. And I thought it was so interesting that like, I think that older generations have always shit on younger generations. And I think older generations will say, like, you know, younger generations are addicted to their phones and that's an issue. But that's the issue that younger generations report is the biggest deal for them as well.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, I'm on my phone all the time and it's the only way I can be connected to the people who like I love and care about, or to a community that makes sense to me. And also I think there's something wrong with this. Like
Yeah.
we deeply know that that's happening to
No,
us.
I feel like phones sap energy. They don't give energy,
Yeah.
right? In the way that
But-
like actual interpersonal human connection does.
But it's not your fault that those things are happening. It's not your phone is built to do that. Netflix is built to make you turn on that next episode of Love is Blind. Like it's built to do those things.
We're watching Love is Blind right now. y'all.
Yeah.
What a garbage TV
Send us
show.
your thoughts about Love is Blind.
I take an edible. I settle in for the night. And watch very attractive people act surprised. They're like, oh my God, you're beautiful. Of course she's fucking beautiful. All of them are beautiful. The whole premise is flawed and I'm over it, okay?
Something that I'm always conscientious about, though, for folks who are dealing with anxiety is in a way like getting back to basics. Like, first of all, checking in with the things that your body really needs on just a very like foundational sort of level.
This is such a recurring theme in this podcast.
Yes, it is, because it's generally what we need to do. The first thing we need to do is be able to like be so gentle and kind with ourselves and remind ourselves that like it makes sense that we're struggling. Everybody's struggling. And that doesn't mean that your struggle is like less important. Like it's a real fucking struggle.
Yeah.
And then check in with like the very ground floor of like, have I eaten a meal that met my body's needs recently? And if not, like go grab a nice protein snack or a carby snack.
And y'all neurodivergent motherfuckers not always eating when you should be. Like,
Right,
I know
yeah.
that for a fact.
That's another thing. If you're neurodivergent, you probably have a harder time even tuning into your body and
Yeah.
what it needs.
Yeah, keeping track of your hydration, keeping track of your hunger, keeping track of your rest,
Yeah.
things like that. Yes, but like even ADHD people can not feel that they need the sleep that they actually need, you know, and your body needs it, homie. Like,
Right. Yeah. There just isn't a way around needing that sleep.
but you're
That's,
saying
like,
these
one
are
of the
like
most
external
foundational things.
factors that do directly contribute to anxiety levels, and that if you can get some control over these very basic things, that will contribute to your ability to reduce anxiety throughout your life.
I don't mean that those things are like the foundational cause of your anxiety. I think that you can be like getting your basic needs met and still be anxious because the world is a very anxiety inducing place. But that's where we start. Like
Yeah.
you want to start with the small controllable things. So two different paths. One is that the antithesis to anxiety is having a plan, because anxiety is like very it's very scattered. There are a million possibilities and anything could go wrong. It over prioritizes usually the minute chance that something will go wrong, and under prioritizes that like it could probably go just fine,
Right.
like neutrally, or maybe even well. So it's one really highlighting the threat involved.
Yeah.
And it makes things feel out of control. And so one thing is like getting to have a plan, and what's the most in your control is being able to like go back to basics. Have I used the bathroom?
Oh,
Am I
okay.
wearing clothes that
Yeah.
are comfortable?
Yeah.
This is if you're neurodivergent or not, but like am I taking care of myself as though I were like a pet that I dearly loved and wanted to make comfortable? Like have I done those things for me? And then the other part of anxiety, and this is what I think is really the work of therapy, is that it's this lack of like trust. It's this lack of trust that we're going to be able to handle it. Even when you're like, what gets me through is my anxiety, there's always that feeling of like, I'm doing it by the skin of my teeth. Like I'm just barely making it, and I'm just, if I
Right.
weren't going to cling on to this thing, like I wouldn't be able to do it. So it's this lack of trust that like, if something unexpected came up, you would be able to handle it. It would be okay. And then it's the lack of trust in like our community that, okay, if I couldn't do it, would somebody catch me? And so attending to your own basic needs can be one of those things that helps to build trust in yourself. And then go hug your friend, like ask for a hug from somebody. Go sit with people talking about something you care about. Go do something that you like love dearly and help build that sense of trust that like there are people out there who see me and who get me and who would catch me if I were gonna fall.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. So just be cool about shit, take good care of yourself, and make a bunch of shit, make a shit ton of friends. Easy.
Yeah, easy peasy. Just go out there and do that. I know it's not easy, and reminding yourself that it's not easy, I think, is another important piece of that. It's just that like this takes time and building trust. If you think about building trust in a relationship, it's something that takes a lot of time. I think all the time back to our early relationship and how there were things that I was like, oh my God, I will never tell anybody this thing about me, not even Price. And then as the years went on, there were fewer and fewer of those things that I felt that way about because that trust had grown slowly and kind of invisibly over time in the background.
As you can probably tell from my Puerto Rico airplane story, it's never occurred to me to keep anything private.
Which I love about you. I could always trust that you were going to tell me something. I had an immense amount of trust from you in the start, and that was a big deal.
I complimented somebody at work. They were wearing glasses. They were having allergy issues, so they weren't wearing their contacts, so they had their glasses on.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, I love your glasses. And they were like, no, you don't. Nobody loves my glasses.
Aww.
And I was like so offended. I was like, listen, listen, motherfucker, I am never going to tell you I like something. Like, why would I? She's like, no, you don't. I was offended. I was like, okay, I will never.
That's a person with anxiety, though, right? Like, that's that lack of trust. That's like the things around me I cannot believe or trust in. And even if something good were to happen, it's sneaky and it's not good. It's really a bad thing.
I was like, you don't know me at all. I would never utter a sentence that I don't truly mean. That's one of my best and worst quality. My strongest trait is that I just tell you what I'm thinking.
It was something that immediately built a sense of trust between us from the start, though, is that you were going to say it, whether it was good or bad, and you were going to be direct about it. And I've always loved that from you. And I, as a very anxious person, I always needed that from you. And it was something that was hard for me to do.
Ooh, if you're feeling anxious in your relationship, you should ask for more clarity from your partner.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Like having...
That's almost self-imposed at that point, if you can just like address it. You didn't like that?
No,
you didn't
I
agree with that?
I didn't like that.
Okay, what's the better way to say it?
Well, basically, we like do what we've been taught to do, right? And so if you had a family who wasn't direct, or if you had a family that was direct but harsh, I've definitely worked with people where like, yeah, their family said what they were thinking, but it was not nice and it was not okay. And so there's this like avoidance of really asking somebody what they feel. Like if I ask somebody about my glasses, they're going to tell me they hate them, you know?
Right.
But down to every little detail of your life. Or you had a family that didn't know how to be direct. And you know, one of the things that can really build up anxiety in children is that there's something going on in your house, but you don't know what it is. The parents aren't communicating with the kids about what's going on. And that will build anxiety almost like nothing else. Price, do you have a thought?
You can't, you can think you're concealing it if you're having a long-term argument with your spouse or something. You can think you can hide that from your kids. But like the vibe's off.
And sometimes it's meant to be a loving thing. It's like, this is really tough
stuff,
and I want to spare the kids from this hard thing. But if you grew up in a home with an ongoing issue but nobody talked about it, you will always have that sense of like, there is something wrong and there's nothing I can do.
I heard you give advice to a friend. This wasn't a client because I don't hear those.
Right.
But I heard you give advice to a friend who her husband is like pretty abusive. And she was trying to console her daughter, saying, no, your dad loves you. Your dad loves you.
Oh, yeah.
And you were like, maybe you should stop saying that because what dad is doing is not loving.
Yeah.
So maybe you should. And she was like, well, I don't want her to think her dad doesn't love her. And it's like, that's actually worse.
Right, because then she thinks that like
this is love.
Right.
This is what love is. This is what love is supposed to feel like.
And that's the same thing. If the message you're receiving doesn't match the environment you're in, that's going to generate a lot of anxiety, and then a huge lack of trust that like you can assess what's going on, that you can understand the world, that you can like determine if a relationship is good for you or not.
Or me hearing like being gay is sinful my entire childhood. Sin leads to death. Sin makes you miserable. And then my best friend comes out of the closet and all of a sudden he's living his best life.
Right. Is healthy again. Is doing well.
That was one of the first big cracks in like my understanding of like my faith, you know, because I was like, wait, isn't the opposite supposed to happen? I was like waiting for the, the shoe to drop, you know, but yeah.
Yeah, but when the message you're receiving doesn't match your lived experience, even if it's just to like mom and dad are saying everything's fine, but something is off. There's something out of balance here.
Yeah.
That's going to build a lot of anxiety. And so then, of course, you carry that into your relationships. You carry that into your workplace. People who show up at work and they're like, I feel like my boss is always angry at me, but I don't. And they don't say anything. In fact, I keep getting like great job reviews and everything is good and it's always good, but they're angry. Yeah, well, there's a good chance that you grew up in a home where like something was always off and you just don't even trust that you would ever be able to tell if something were off.
I come from a contracting background where in my field, it's very easy to cut a contract with somebody. Usually when you're a full-time employee doing what I do, you can't just fire somebody without cause. There's a process that needs to be gone through, and it's very cumbersome, and it's much easier to put somebody like through a plan, like to just talk to somebody about like how they can improve. But oftentimes when you're contracting and something goes awry, you can just get cut without warning.
Right. There's no
protections in place.
That.
So I had a number of positions that the contract was ended early for various reasons.
With no feedback.
No feedback, just done, just into the void, just gone. And it's like, this is my living, and I'm sure I asked for it because I was contracting. Like I get it, but like also, you know, I expected to see it all the way through. I've left my fair share of contracts early too, so it's all I'm trying to say is I brought that energy into this new job where I am a full-time employee, and so for the last couple of months I have been feeling so severely stressed out about this job, and it has nothing to do with this job. This job is like objectively going well, and I'm starting to see that now. Yeah. But I was so. And like I'm not.
Well, you've been in environment after environment that was like things are good, things are good, things are good. Goodbye. Nice.
Yeah.
And so you got into this job and being told that things are going well, being told that they were excited to have you on the team.
It's like side eye. I'm like, is it though? Right. Really?
Yeah.
When are you gonna pull the rug out from under me?
You don't like my glasses. Like it just it doesn't hit you that way because you're used to being in an environment where clearly something else is going on behind the scenes and you didn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's just it's also the way the budget works. You're like a cost to a specific project as opposed to like a part of an HR budget, which is like a separate thing. So like when they need to abruptly cut costs as a contractor, you're the first to go.
Oh yeah. It doesn't have to be about you at all, but there's
sometimes
always
it was. Sometimes I'm pretty convinced it was about me.
But yeah, that brought just this whole new, like you've dealt with anxiety off and on over the years to a different degree, but that brought a ton of work anxiety for you. And like work trauma is so real if you've worked in environments where you've been mysteriously let go.
Well, I want to underscore this. Like I'm married to you. I've heard everything that you have said tonight. I have been hearing for a long time.
And in like the last couple weeks, you've been dealing with this.
Yeah, I'm not recording an episode on anxiety because I have a lot of like education to provide, or you know, like I'm in this with everyone. Like I get this, and like knowing what you're saying, knowing that those things are true, doesn't necessarily alleviate a lot of our anxiety.
Yeah.
But it is helpful.
Yeah.
And when you're able to start seeing your environment more clearly and you're able to take inventory and like take better care of yourself and do the things that you're advising, things do start to feel better.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Another thing, trouble is like trying to walk up me right now, the cat. Okay. Another thing that can be really helpful, something that I realized that I was doing over the years, because you'd call it out, is that I would say, Price, I'm anxious about da-da-da-da-da. And I literally just say it. And so you'd be like, oh, you're anxious again? Because
Really?
I'm like constantly chronically
Oh
anxious.
my God, Ashlyn's anxious.
I think that's happened less and less over the past year or two, specifically since
Yeah.
I've known about being autistic and I've started to put some pieces together. And now usually when I'm anxious, you're like, are you wearing your bra? I'm like, oh God, left the bra on again. That's what happened.
Take that bra off, girl. You feel better.
But genuinely, I had never gotten to say that I was anxious before. I'd never gotten to say I'm anxious about this thing and have that received in a way that makes sense. First of all, for me to be able to name my anxiety and then to also have somebody who was able to receive it. And that is a huge deal for the people in your life to understand anxiety. Like if you're anxious and this episode is helping you, make sure to share with the people in your life who aren't anxious. That's one of the things I hear again and again is that like I have anxiety and my partner doesn't and they don't get it. And me getting to say, Price, I'm anxious about this. And even though you'd be like, you're anxious again, like, of course.
I sound super helpful.
But no, really, you like heard it. You were able to receive that thing, not as me making like it being critical,
Yeah.
not of me trying to like blow things out of proportion, but like, oh my God, this is the experience in my brain. And you got to receive that so lovingly and kindly. It really, really helped me through. And it became a great tool that I had to say, I'm anxious about this, and for you to receive that well.
I don't know if this is the evolution that everybody goes through, but when I'm talking about my personal anxiety now, I'm more often talking about the frustration I feel than I am so specifically anxious about the thing I'm anxious about, because it is usually not that big of a deal. And I know that.
Somebody was just talking to me about the anxiety about anxiety and what a big deal that is.
I'm so frustrated. It's like, oh, this person was rude to me. And that really threw my whole fucking day off. And it's like upsetting that somebody had that much power over me.
Yeah.
Like that's what I'm
Yeah,
frustrated
sure.
about in this moment. But it's like getting to call it what it was. I am anxious over this, and I'm not happy that I'm anxious over it.
Again, it's that feeling of being out of control. It's that like something could just come along and throw my whole day off. And I can't expect it. I can't anticipate it. And that feeling is a very anxiety inducing one. So the interaction itself is anxiety inducing because your body's like gearing up for fight or flight in that moment.
Yeah.
But then there's also the other layer of anxiety, which is like somebody could come out and suddenly I get thrown into anxiety again when I was like fine before. And that's really tough. So that's another like back to basics, and also building up that trust with yourself that like I can get anxious and I can move through it. I can
Right.
get anxious and I can identify it and I can share with somebody who loves me. And I'm going to feel a little bit less anxious at the end of that.
Right. I quick question, kind of a
Yeah.
random one. What's the dividing line between stress and anxiety?
So diagnostically, like coming from a really
You sound like such a nerd when you say that.
like coming from a very clinical lens, anxiety is meeting a certain threshold and it comes with certain symptoms that last a certain period of time. And generalized anxiety is supposedly about nothing. Generalized anxiety is like about a little bit of everything. Everything kind of makes you anxious. You're kind of anxious all the time. And stress is usually like a specific thing, right? Like it's, you can be in a stressful job, you can be in something, and there's,
Yeah.
I would argue that beyond maybe some of these symptoms showing up differently, besides like maybe stress isn't coming with racing heart or something, they're kind of coming from a similar place in my view.
Yeah.
Chronic anxiety is going to lead to stress. So stress to me is that long-term reaction on your body, is that long-term like wearing down of your body from being so chronically dysregulated
You're talking
all
about
the
a
time.
literal wearing down.
A
It is
literal wearing down.
Physically impacting you.
Your body is not meant to live in anxiety state all the time, because again, it's that fight or flight response. You're meant to be in fight or flight a couple minutes, an hour maybe.
Yeah.
You're not meant to live in it. And when you live in it all the time, it is literally like flooding your system with hormones that are not meant to be there all of the time. And it is wearing your body down. And it's really tough on a body to be anxious all of the time. It's really tough on a heart to beat so fast all of the time, on a digestive system to be constantly dysregulated all the time.
I have two thoughts, and they both kind of bring me some shame. And one of them, I think, maybe well earned, because I still have a pretty bad relationship with the shame in my life. But one of them, maybe not. But the first one is that medication has been extremely helpful to me.
Yeah.
Especially if I'm feeling acutely anxious over something. There's medication I'm able to take that dampens that down. It makes me feel like a normal fucking human again. And I don't like. I've just was raised in a place, not deliberately, but I was just raised in a place where like that wasn't the right thing to turn to when you need
medication was like an extreme.
Yeah, but if I can just be real, like that's helpful. So if you're listening and you struggle with chronic anxiety, there may be medication options.
I have seen anxiety medication be so deeply helpful to some folks. I have a lot of anxiety clients who don't use any medication at all, and then an awful lot who do and have maybe even started during sessions with me where it kind of feels like we couldn't even get a foothold on it. And something about anxiety medication is that it can just help you get back to that baseline. Because again, when you're anxious, it's shutting down that front part of your brain. You're not able to process things logically. And when you're anxious, you've got to go back to work. And a lot of us, when we're anxious, we still got to deal with our kids and our families and the other things that are going on.
Yeah.
Life keeps moving. And if you can get something that helps to get you that leg up, it doesn't mean you permanently have to do that. And it doesn't mean that means you can't cope with your anxiety. It just gives you enough leverage to get going. And I think that it's been hugely helpful in your life to know that, okay, I can feel better in like an hour. And that's a big deal, or half an hour, or whatever it is.
The other thing I'll admit, and I'm not proud of this, but several years ago I worked with somebody who his doctor advised him to quit his job, and we had similar jobs, and because he was so anxious all of the time, and he quit, and I just didn't hear from him anymore, and I thought he was such a pussy for that, because at the time I was dealing with a lot of anxiety. I was like, we're all anxious, dude. Like nut up and do it. It was I'm not proud of like that response, and I recognize now how tough that decision must be.
Yeah.
How I've managed to be able to keep working through it, but sometimes I have held jobs that like weren't healthy for me.
Yeah.
And I think even the job I held then was not healthy for me, and I have done a lot of damage to myself. And I think that taking the opportunity to reevaluate like the crux of your entire life, and depending on your anxiety, and recognizing that this isn't an optimal space for my very human biological brain to be operating in, just living in the modern world. And I've got to find like paths that make sense for me. I've got to find my own peace and my own happiness, because we only get to live once, and slaving away for a corporation that makes me want to die may not be the answer. I think that takes guts, and I have completely 180'd on my opinion of this guy and what he did.
Well, it can be so environmental. And I think that there have been a lot of situations in therapy for me or for other therapists where it doesn't matter if you have all of the tools in the world. If you're in an environment that is chronically making you anxious, there probably aren't enough like breathing exercises you could possibly do to survive in that environment. And like the best thing that you can do, and I think it took a lot of courage for that guy to leave a position, because there were reasons that you stayed, right? I'm guessing like pay and I
don't remember what he switched to, a different job, and it was just like not a career kind of job. It was like a dead end, low paying sort of job, but I'd have to imagine that he was much happier there,
I think about you over the course of your career, something that you've always said, I think sometimes seriously and sometimes jokingly, is like your favorite place to work was when you were working in a kitchen, like making bagel sandwiches. Yeah. And there you got to have a great routine about it. You knew when the quality was good. Like everything was so clear in that environment, and the feedback was so direct.
Right.
And the system was knowable and understandable, and you could master it. And it was fun.
I had so much fun.
There's something to be said for that. And I think there are a lot of folks, especially following like COVID and all of that, who are reevaluating if being in a workplace that constantly stresses them out is worth the other, perks that come along with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that this is probably the most poignant episode for me personally, because I deal with anxiety pretty much. I deal with it a lot of the time, and it is so frustrating. It's such a frustrating state of being to be so anxious all of the time, and I wish that I wasn't.
And again, your brain is constantly cycling through trying to figure out what's going on. Because your body is so sensitive and so attuned to your environment, which is super helpful if there's a lion hiding in the brush and you need to be able to sense that before you really know what's going on. And then you're looking. Now you're finding it. Now you're figuring out the cause and getting out of there. It makes sense that you... God, my mind is all over the place right now. It makes sense, though, that you... you're looking for a reason for what's going on, and it's really stressful. And then that's what I was going to say. It comes along with a lot of shame to be like, I can't figure out what's wrong with me. And we always look at ourselves as the issue. Well, then I must just be broken. And it's no, our environment really isn't suited to us. And your brain and your body just know that on a really deep level.
Yeah.
And getting to make those adjustments can sometimes be a big deal.
So what we're telling people is consider medication. Reevaluate your life, and if drastic changes should be made. But short of that, make sure that you're building trust in your own senses and taking better care of yourself.
Yep. Yeah.
On a real fundamental level.
Yeah, and trust in yourself that I can take good care of myself. Yeah. I don't need to be anxious to be able to do that. But my system's built for taking care of me.
And maybe it's time to graciously approach your boss and say, look, I deal with really severe anxiety. Mm-hmm. It would mean a lot. I am worried that you're upset with me.
Yeah.
And I'm okay if you are. I would just like to know. Maybe it's time to take that step. I lead project meetings all the time, and I don't get very much feedback about how they go. Mm-hmm. And I have somebody on my calls who I've told how anxious I feel about it, and will hit me up afterwards and give me hey, great. I thought today went well.
Again, seeking clarity. I love that.
Yeah, and so that's a way that I've tried to make my environment a little bit more accommodating of what of my needs. So maybe think about it like that as well. Think of the ways that you can change your environment to better match but you have to understand what your feelings are in the first place in order to do that.
Yeah. The thought that was interrupting my other thought earlier when I was getting confused. I can't believe how much more distant I feel from this conversation than I did just a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Again, having lifetime anxiety. And I just thought that was always going to be the way that it was. And again, I still had that deep belief that I needed it, that it was what was getting me through. And I certainly do have anxiety sometimes now. And I think that when a situation's stressful, I tend toward anxiety, but it doesn't run my life like it used to. Well, hello, Lafayette. Food runs the cats' lives, but
if anybody's counting at home, that is 4 cats that you're not proud of it.
Not proud.
During COVID, we collected cats like fucking Pokemon.
But yeah, I feel grateful to get to be in this space. And when I was first starting as a therapist, I was definitely coming from I am anxious right now. Let's talk about your anxiety. And I still think it was helpful, and I got to have some great conversations, but it's fun to get to go, oh, there's kind of another side to this as well.
It does get better.
It does get better. And I just have so much gratitude to the person that I was for dealing with anxiety for that long and continuing to trudge through, and then also so much gratitude to be on this side of things. And you've come, as much as you still deal with anxiety, you're in a very different place than you used to be too.
Yeah. No, it's still very much an active part of my life, but it is much different than it used to be.
Yeah.
I'm not acting on the anxiety in the same way that I used to. That's probably the biggest change.
That's the thing.
I'm feeling it, but I'm not reacting to it in IRL, right?
Yeah.
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 That's saving me a lot of heartache with my friends, my family, my colleagues.
It's really a game changer.
Well, Ash, for the last time in
This year.
2023, I am so grateful for your time. Thank you for your time.
Price, thank you for your time.
And y'all, we will see you next time, January 2024, on I Married Your Therapist. The cats have been a little out of pocket for this one.
The cats have been a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw an article today saying that like millennials were misusing out of pocket to mean that they'd be like away from their desk. So they'd be like, I'll be out of pocket from 1 to 2 p.m. today. So I'm really glad to know that you know how to use that phrase correctly.
I've used it.
We
I'll
use it all the
both ways.
time.
I'll use it both
Oh,
ways.
for real?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm never out of pocket because you can't. When I'm not at my desk, I am not available.
You actively
Y'all write that down.
You actively mean you'll be out of pocket from 1 to 2.
If you hit me up when I'm out of pocket, the response will be out of pocket. Okay.